All right, in this video, we're going to be introducing assemblies, mating assembly parts, and the couple ways you can do this. You can start with a blank assembly file, or you can start with all of your parts being open, okay? If you're starting with like a random assembly file, then here, I'll do it this way. If I go to new, right? Oops, some templates are not present. That's all right. Right, doesn't want to give me an assembly file, so I'm going to open a part. Okay, so I'm going to go to my Open tab, and I'm going to open all of my parts within the assembly. Okay, and I think part 2. Yes, part 2 is my mounting plate. All right, so with all of my files being open, okay, this is kind of the most ideal, but if you've got an assembly that has 100 parts, probably not the best idea, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit the new icon, and we're going to say make assembly from part or drawing. And it's going to take our saved file, and we should see at the very top of the screen assembly 1, and the bottom of the screen on the right hand side editing assembly. Okay, that tells me that I am currently in assembly mode. So the left side, or the properties screen, basically says begin assembly. Okay, and part 2 is highlighted because that's where we started our assembly from. And like I said, the very first item that you bring in is going to be a fixed item. So I'm going to left click on part 2 and left click inside my empty space. Okay, and that brings my part into view. Okay, now my feature management tree is a little bit different. Okay, I still have the front plane, top plane, and right plane, but these are the planes of the assembly file, okay? The next icon underneath is a part file. And you'll notice a couple of things here. One of them is that it has this little letter F in parentheses. And that means that the part is fixed, okay? If I left click on the part, the entire part turns blue. If I left click and try to move it, I cannot. And it says the selected component is fixed. It cannot be moved. I'm trying to move it right now. If I right click on that part and change it to float, then I can move my part. Okay. So if you wanted to align it with the planes, you can do so. But generally speaking, the first part that you bring in gets fixed. So I'm going to right click on part 2 in the feature management tree and select fixed. And that's going to put the little letter F in there again. Now, the cool thing about this is that the drop down arrow, or the expansion arrow next to the icon, basically gives you a secondary feature management tree of how this part was made. So if you need to make any changes to the part, you can do it within the assembly. If you need to mate to certain parts, to certain features of that part, you can do that by dropping down and opening up the part to its original part files. Okay, so after we bring in our first part, we have to bring in additional parts. So I'm going to go up into the Assembly tab, Insert Components, left click. Now again, this box is going to show me what open documents I have. If I don't have any open documents, I'm going to use the Browse button and say, oh, well, there's part 3. I need to bring that in. So I'm going to left click on part 3 and hit open. And that brings part 3 into view. Okay, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit and I'm going to bring my wheel down below. Left click to place it. Okay, so now I have to do it again. Go to Insert Components. Find a component that I haven't placed yet. So let's try part 5. I left click to place it. Insert Components again. Part 1. There's my axle. Insert Components. What haven't we done yet? Part 4. Okay, part 4 is the side plate. So we need multiple instances of the side plate. Is that correct? Yes. All right, so if I need multiple instances of the same part, what I need to do is I need to select the little push pin to keep that part visible after I place it. So by selecting that push pin, I can left click on my screen once, and then it gives me a second copy. I left click again, and it brings me a new copy. So up until that push pin is not selected anymore, it's going to give me multiple copies. Okay, so I'm done. I'm going to click OK. So my feature management tree now has all of my parts listed. Okay, I can see really quickly that this first part, part 2, is fixed. Okay, and it's really easy to find out what part is what. Because remember, this is going to be just a bunch of random part numbers, right? It's not going to be part 1. It's going to be part 100-00572668. Okay, I don't know what that is. I might not know that by heart yet. Okay, but I can roll over the part and it shows me an orange outline of where that part is. Okay, or if you want a more obvious way to tell, you can left click on the part and it'll highlight that part in blue. There's part number 3. The tire is part number 4. The mounting plate is part number 2. So by clicking over here on the left on the feature management tree, you can basically identify what part that is in your assembly. Vice versa, you can click on a part in the assembly. If I select this, my feature management tree lights up the correct part. Left click, the correct part highlights itself in the feature management tree. So either way, I can see, oh, I've got the wheel. What part is the wheel in my feature management tree? I don't know. Let me click on it. Click on the overall wheel, and I see that it's part 3. Then I can make any changes or alterations to part 3. Okay. Now this is all in 3D space. The only thing that is fixed is that mounting plate. Okay. So we have to take a look at faces that are going to be mounted. All right. And right now, I've got one of these side plates that are floating above the plate and one of them that is floating a little bit down below the plate. Okay. So I might have some issues that I need to be aware of here when I create the mates. Okay. So how do we create mates between parts? You have to be very careful to make one selection only. If you click twice, then you're going to ruin your mate. Okay? So I'm going to go up to the Assembly tab, and I'm going to select the mating paperclip, and that changes my properties to a mate property. Okay? This is broken up into various types of mates. I have a mate selections box, which is usually highlighted blue. So that means it's waiting for me to select entities to mate. And then I have standard mates. All right. I'm going to hide the standard mates. I also have advanced mates, profile center, symmetric, width, path mate, linear, coupler mates, and then mechanical mates. Cam mates, slot mates, hinges, gears, rack and pinion, screws, universal joint mates. Okay, those are specific mates designed for specific purposes. For your purposes, you are primarily going to be using nothing but the standard mates. Coincidence, parallel, perpendicular, tangent, concentric, locks, and distance mates, and possibly angled mates. Okay? So, I need to be able to use my mouse wheel creatively. I'm going to press down on my mouse wheel, and I'm going to go underneath, and I'm going to say that the bottom face of my mounting plate, left click, is going to be my first mate selection. And I see that represented here. As soon as I clicked on the face, it says face 1 of part 2-1. Okay. So now that I've got that selected, I want to say that the top part of one of these side plates, I have to zoom in. Right now, I've got the side face highlighted. Okay, right now is the edge that is highlighted. You want to make sure you get the correct surface. Okay, this is the face. This is the edge. This is the face. Click on the face, and it moves. As it moves, you're going to have a little pop-up, and it's going to confirm with a dark selection that you want a coincident mate. Okay? This is a little flip alignment. All right? If we take a look at this really quick, they are on the same plane. If I flip the alignment, you notice they are still on the same plane, but it realigns the parts. Okay? So you may have to flip the alignment to get the correct alignment, and they are supposed to be coincident. So I'm going to green check to confirm. Okay, I'm not finished with this mate yet. Okay, so I can see that I can move this around, and it looks like it's going above. Okay, but if I flip this around, it's actually still on the same plane. Okay, so this is very deceiving and messes with a lot of people's brains. Okay. Again, it looks like it's above, when in reality, got to go the right way here. I probably messed with this really big. Okay. It is on the same plane. All right. So the next thing is, yeah, I messed this pretty good. I'm going to try to bring it a little closer. Okay, so technically this surface and the bottom surface have been mated together. Okay, next I want to make sure that the holes are concentric. So I'm going to zoom in and say that the inside hole, okay, see face number 3 of part number 4. That's what I selected. I'm going to zoom out. And I'm going to zoom in over here and select the inside wall of this hole. Left click. That brings it together. The shaded option is concentric. Okay. So I want to confirm that. Yes, it is concentric, and it's concentric in the right way. Green check. Okay. So I've locked it. The only thing I can do to move is move it rotationally. Okay, so I'm going to move it out of the way and make sure that the next 2 holes are mated concentrically. Now, at this point, this is where you're going to find out if there's an error in your model. If the holes are not exact, the spacing is not exact, it will not mate. Okay? Because it cannot conform to concentric. So I'm going to left click on this hole, left click on that hole. It mates concentric, green check. And I've completed my first mate. Okay. At this point, I'm going to green check and get out of mate. And now this is stuck. This is stuck for good. I can left click and try to drag it, and it's not going anywhere. All the other stuff, I can still move. Okay, so I can't move this anywhere. It's locked in because it's properly mated. All right, so to continue, I'm going to go back to mate up in the toolbar. And I'm going to select surfaces. So I'm going to pick this surface and mate it to the bottom surface. Coincident mate? Yes, it is. Is it the right direction? Yes, it is. I'm going to confirm that particular option. Okay? It's definitely in the wrong spot, but we're getting there. I really moved it out of the way. Okay. Next is going to be the holes again. Pick the inside of one hole and the inside of another hole. Concentric, yes it is. Confirm the mate. Okay. Make sure that as you're mating, you're working with one part only. Okay. I know a lot of students say, oh, well, you know, this side plate is close now, but then this is close as well, so I'm going to kind of swap back and forth. Do one part at a time and get everything fully constrained. Left click, left click. It satisfies the concentric mate and green check. Okay. So that part looks good so far. Okay. Next is going to be the axle. Okay. And I'm going to do it a little different, but I'm going to say that the outside edge of the axle is concentric with one of the holes. I see concentric and I agree. Okay. Just because it placed it there doesn't mean it's right. I can still move it. Okay. And it's still concentric. Okay. So again, that's one thing to be aware of. It's still concentric, but it's moving through the hole. So now I have to lock it down so that it stays in the hole properly. Okay. So I'm going to select the inside face. Right. So the inside face of that axle will go to the outside face of my side mount. And hit OK. Okay, so this is now flush with the side. If I look at the other side, we can see that the sizing isn't quite so. Right? The axle is a little bit short. Okay, so we might have to go back in and reevaluate the size of the axle. Maybe it has to be further than an inch. Or we can split the difference. So how do I change a mate that we have already created? Okay. I'm going to green check the mate here. Okay. Or I could actually go to the last mate that I made, which I think, no, that's the wrong one. This is the last mate. Okay. So that's the last mate that I've created. I'm going to green check and get out of mate. Okay. There's a couple of ways to find what is mated to what and how things are mated. Okay. One is I can select the object. So I select my object and I go to the little pop-up window that comes up and I see this little paper clip with an eyeball. That's called View Mates. So if I select View Mates, it's going to show me all the mates that are associated with that one part. It has a concentric mate, and it has a coincident mate. So it shows me that this orange plane is coincident with the purple plane. So if I need to add or change something about that, I'm going to right click and go to Edit Feature. Okay, and that brings me to the original mate window. Okay, and from here, I'm going to add a distance mate. So I click on distance. And did I do this in custom? All right, hold on a second. I'm going to undo. Let me green check this. And get out of mate. Get out of this. I want to make sure that I'm in inches. So change from custom to IPS. Okay. Try it again. Left click. Go to the view mates. Go to coincident and edit features. I'm going to add a distance relation. And I'm going to change this distance to, let's say, 0.1 maybe. Let's see what happens. Okay, so 0.1, I can see it move to the left. Another 0.1, right? And I can see it moving in the right direction. So maybe I change it to 0.05. So 0.05 looks a little bit better. It looks like it's sitting in the middle with a little bit on the outside here and a little bit on the outside there. Okay, I can also swap and flip the dimension and have it go the other way. So now it's traveling to the right instead of to the left. Okay, so a couple options that you can play with there. Okay, I'm going to green check this. Green check my mate and hit out of part 1. So now this is fixed. Okay, other than the rotation. Okay, I can still technically rotate this around. It's a little hard to see, but it's rotating. But otherwise, it is fixed in there. Okay. So that's how you can add a little bit of a distance mate to a coincident mate. So we continue adding mate again. And I want to add the hole to the axle. Make it concentric. Okay. I can push it in, push it through. Okay, this is the same thing here. I need to find a surface that I can mate to. So I'm going to say the outside wheel hub. Actually, let's do the wheel hub in here. So the face of that wheel hub should touch the inside of the side mount. Okay, and here again, I can add a distance right to that point. So I'm going to say 0.1. And maybe let's have it travel in the wrong direction. Nope. 0.05. 0.05 seems to work well. And I click green check. Okay, now in reality, this has a little bit of play. Okay, it's got room to move side to side. So that's not a big deal. Lastly, the inside of the tire goes to the outside of the wheel. Concentric mate. Yes, it is. Confirm with the green check. Okay, then what? Edges. Okay, or this face on the side should match up with this face on the side. Coincident mate. Yes, it is. Confirm it. Okay, that's got the whole assembly now. And now I can turn the wheel. All I'm doing is left clicking and holding down that wheel and turning my mouse. Okay. Now, is this fully constrained? Not really, because the tire is technically just sitting there. It's not constrained to the wheel. It doesn't rotate. So if you can see, this is rotating freely. All right, so if I really wanted to spend the time, I could add another mate so that the tire and the wheel were mated together. How would I do that? Is there any clues?
Outside surface of the wheel to the inside surface of the tire.
Nope. Remember how we built these? We built these off of planes, right? So I'm going to go into the feature management tree of these parts. Okay. And basically I have the tire is, as I hover over it, it's part 5. The wheel is part 3. So I'm going to go into part 3, open it up, and take a look at the planes. Okay, so there's the top plane. Okay, that's the top plane of the wheel. And now I want to go to part 5. And I'm going to try to find a plane that will match. Is it going to be the top plane? I think it's going to be the top plane of my tire. So now those two planes from those two parts are aligned. Okay, and fixed. So I'm going to green check. Green check again to get out of mate. And now the tire and the wheel are moving together. Okay. So not only can you use the physical geometry of the parts in the assembly, but you can use how they were built as well. Okay. So that is the basics of pulling in files to your assembly, mating them together. All right. And then when we save the assembly, I'm going to click Save. Rebuild and save the document is recommended. Sure, why not? I'm in my caster assembly, and you'll notice that the save type is an assembly file, an ASM or SLD ASM for SolidWorks assembly. You'll notice that I can also save it into many, many other formats, other CAD programs, graphics programs, STL file formats, image formats. All right, but we want to keep this as a SolidWorks assembly file. So I'm going to call this cast 100 ASSY for assembly. Okay, or, right, it should be a part number. So it would be a CST-100. And I'm going to call this caster assembly for the description. Same thing applies for when we create a drawing out of this assembly. Save the part, save the files. I'm good to go.